We're here to kind of continue the discussion that Carl started. And if indeed he's right, and we risk to have a worker backlash, and there is a danger that the governments with short-term thinking will succumb to pressure from the workers and maybe block progress. My first question will be to you, Mark, and ask you, well, what can business do to help prevent us from getting stuck and blocking the good things that AI might bring?
Thanks for the question. Well, first of all, maybe what is ERGO? It's an insurance company, because it's important to understand we have a lot of back office jobs. So you have a high tendency to say, okay, there's a lot to optimize with AI and with robotics. And that why, for sure, we are also pushing and developing that. But how we did it, we took an approach to be fully transparent. In Germany, we have normally a strong workers' council that basically could block. And when we brought in the new technologies, we played it very transparent right from the beginning, saying this is a robot, this is what he can do, this is the effect on the process and on the business. And this is AI, this is where we're going to use it, and this is the effect on the job for the people. And
what was their initial reaction?
Yeah, first of all, there was skepticism. Yeah, when you talk about AI in our company, people are afraid. Because they watch the movies, they see the AI that is replacing everything that humans do, but this is not happening. Right now, we are in the area of narrow AI. So this is basic mathematics, and it can do certain things, but it has no emotions, it cannot set its own targets. So you can automate processes with that, but where a human is strong, that is creativity, that is the emotional part, AI cannot be used at all. So what we see right now, and I think that is a clear chance, playing it fully transparent, and then moving people from the back office to the front office. Getting people from running and playing a process to transforming, to improving it. Because we have right now in our company still people who type something from system A into system B, and they do that the whole day. And right now this is not used anymore. Yeah, we can use robotics to basically get them on different jobs that are much, much more fulfilling. And we have now 30 robots active, and the feedback is throughout positive. The people focus more on different tasks, on the customer, and they are happy that they got rid of really typing something from system A to system B.
Okay, so what do you do in terms of reassuring people that their jobs are not going to be totally wiped out? Sure, you've got some people who've got new jobs, but shareholders and boards are likely to say to companies like yours, hey, AI is supposed to make us more efficient, so how many jobs are we going to cut? So how do you get around that?
Well, first of all, I think you have to really take both perspectives, because on the other hand, we for sure have the challenge of retirement. As an insurance business, we have 160 years in business. So we have right now a lot of people that are on the age of 55 going into the 60s, and we know we're going to have a challenge, or we have to hire a lot of new people. So when we are not ready with technology, with digitalization, that will be a challenge. Can I now secure every job? Yeah. Will there not be some jobs lost? No, I cannot. And also here, it is a matter of being transparent. But what I also do not believe is that in the near future, we will have empty offices where only the machines will do the job. Yeah? As I said, we as humans, we have really strength that a machine is not able to copy, not now, not within the next 10 years, and potentially never. And that is our emotion and our creativity. And we are also trying to get to the boundary. So we have created a pure digital player in insurance. And we said, we automate everything that is possible. And we did it greenfield, so no legacy IT. We were able to choose the best we can. But there were a few things, it's a motor insurance in Germany, there were a few things where we do not let the machine do the job. And that is when people get harmed in an accident. You cannot do that. People want a human voice, they want to talk to somebody, and they want to be taken care of because they are really emotional. So even when you go to the limit and say, we do everything digital, there will be certain tasks that will always stay with a human.
So to be realistic, do you think that you can actually be more efficient as a company without laying off a big percentage of people. Will the efficiencies that AI brings to the business kind of allow you to fund the reskilling of people and keep the majority of your workers?
Well, I think there will be for sure transformation, yeah. But I also say this is not now in the order of magnitude what you certainly hear. Sometimes it's 40%. I'm not expecting that. So we have a clear plan of growth and of retirement schedules, and we will optimize our processes and get for sure more efficient. But at the moment, we have rather the other way around. So currently people are working too much. We have over hours, sometimes weekend work. But this is depending on our processes. We are bringing now in the technology to basically get rid of that and be prepared for further growth.
So, Carl, let me ask you, from what you see as an economist, are a lot of European businesses being as transparent as ERGO?
I wouldn't say so necessarily, and I think that there's a demand for transparency, and I would expect it to continue to go in that direction. I mean, if we look historically, transparency has also been the best way of managing, changes in the workforce. And if you go back to the 1960s, one of the virtues of the automation debates of that time is that sociologists actually did some serious efforts of trying to look into how people felt about automation, and mostly in the early stages before machinery was introduced, resistance was common. But once the unknown became the known, opinions shifted. But businesses management played a very important role in that process in terms of communicating the changes that were taking place, trying to make sure that most people have the right skills to make the transition, and also in trying to ensure that no downgrading was taking place, that people didn't fear for being downgraded to a lower paid job as automation progressed.
So one question for both of you that I have is, earlier today on stage, people were talking about Europe being a more human-centric type of society, that there are shared values. Do you think that there is an opportunity for European businesses to kind of take a lead here as well in terms of being transparent, in terms of setting a kind of standard for how to reskill your workforce, and be known as, trustworthy companies? Is this an opportunity? Or do we, if we're taking the moral high road as the other panel discussed, will we risk being left even further behind?
No, I think there is, but I think it also, there are very many different ways in approaching this, and it could be a very bottom-up-ish approach, or it can be a top-down approach. And I tend to favor the bottom-up-ish. And the simple reason for that is that some demand needs to exist for an introduction of something to make sense. And I think we were discussing privacy in the earlier panel. I think that a lot can actually be achieved in the sort of domain of technology to solve some of these issues. So Tim Berners-Lee, for example, the inventor of the World Wide Web, has a project now called Solid, which aims to decentralize the internet. So rather than data being in silos at Amazon or Facebook, people will gain ownership of their own data. They can decide whether they want to keep it private. They can decide whether they want to sell it and participate in it economically. They can decide whether they want to share it with certain type of apps, or which type of apps they want to share with, or which not, and so on and so forth. So I think that is a more promising replace or promising start than introducing a lot of sort of top-down legislation, which tends to favor the incumbent.
What do you think?
Yeah, basically building on that, I think it's for sure true that we have to find our own ways to that. I'm pretty confident. If we would copy the US or if we would copy China, that would be a route to failure. We have to build on our strengths, and what do we have? In Europe, we have highly educated and skilled people. So they basically control where you really have to bring the technology in. So when you want to implement AI, you have to work together with them and not against them, because they would basically show you that your technology is failing. So that's why I strongly believe in the bottom-up approach, taking the highly skilled people with them, and then we have the unions and the Workers' Council. And also here, we have to take the people with us. If they want to block us, they can block us for a long time. And then we basically, and sometimes I see that in the discussion, there is not enough transparency. AI is seen as a big threat of jobs, and it's basically blocked by default. And then you have the two components fighting against each other. The one that are pushing, they're looking to China, they're looking to the US and saying, we are much too small, we have to move. And on the other hand, you have the people who are afraid of losing their jobs, and they are fighting that. And we cannot afford that. So the only European way, from my perspective, is that we have a joint approach towards that, leverage the knowledge that we have, and start immediately. Yeah? We should be pragmatic around it. There will be, we are at the narrow IoT field, narrow AI field at the moment, and we have to explore that. If we wait now and define the year and future from 10 to 15 years, that would be too late. So basically, use your strength, act now, and get going.
Okay. Carl, do you want to add to that?
Well, no, I think I broadly agree. But I think I would say one thing to add to that. I think that a lot of the possibilities for making sure that artificial intelligence is allowed to progress, and B, making sure that it's beneficial more broadly, has to do with the distribution of political power more than anything else, right? If you look at a country like Saudi Arabia, it has money coming out of the ground. If you look at a country like Norway, it also has money coming out of the ground. It's being very differently shared in those two countries. So it is very much a matter of institution and finding sort of the right balance of political power, people representing different institutions. If you go to a country like Argentina, you will find that they have no railroads for the simple reason that the lorry unions are extremely strong. And that is not a good outcome. On the other hand, it's not a good outcome either that we see spending on corporate lobbying skyrocketing and labor unions in decline, because it's shifting the balance of power away from people that previously felt that they had more of a stake in the economy. So it's about achieving that right balance, and that can be difficult, but maybe Europe has a role in being that balancing part.
I think a number of people would argue that there is a need for a third way. When, in the development of AI, many people do not agree with China's use of the technology to control its population, or the US method, which is essentially no government oversight and companies fueled purely by greed. So Europe, I think, has an opportunity to develop its own brand of AI, one that reflects European values and is something that people can trust. And this can be important for companies because, as was mentioned on stage earlier, if you don't have the trust of your customers or your workers, your business isn't going to do very well. So, maybe trust, transparency, and ethics are the three things that should ground Europe's AI going forward, and that business will need to play a role in that, but so will government. You've talked to businesses' role. What, Carl, do you think governments should be doing to make sure that Europe takes the right road forward, going forward?
Well, I think there's a number of things, and I think there's a tendency to believe that we have this one big challenge and we need one really big solution to it, and that must be universal basic income. I think that there is a lot of things that may sound minor individually, that can make a big difference collectively. So where I grew up in southern Sweden, for example, Malmö was a city that was doing very economically poorly because it specialized in building ships, and the shipyard closed down in the early 90s. And it continued to do poorly actually up until the construction of the bridge to Copenhagen, which allowed people to stay put in Malmö where housing was cheap, commuting to Copenhagen where there's an abundance of good jobs. And this created a virtuous cycle in which people began to spend the money locally where they lived, which gave a boost to the local service economy in Malmö, and created a virtuous cycle. And it's now one of the most, if not the most dynamic labor market in Europe. We really need to do something about housing, because the prime beneficiaries of the technological revolution in computing so far actually been owners of real estate. And the reason for that, as I mentioned during my presentation, is that new tech jobs tend to be highly clustered. And that in turn creates demand for a lot of local in-person type of services in those places, which tends to drive up home prices in prime locations. We have a lot of awful zoning restrictions in places, which prevents housing supply from expanding. And as a result of that, these places are essentially becoming unlivable. And there's a reason that businesses are starting to move out from the valley to places like Austin, because people can no longer afford to live there. So that is a perfect recipe for killing off a city. Thirdly, I think we actually need to help people to relocate. So the way people have adjusted to technological change in the past has been A, by acquiring new skills, and B, moving to where new jobs are emerging. Moving places can be seen as an investment where you require liquidity up front in order to get a better paying job or get a job in the first place. So for people that are unemployed and in southern Spain or wherever they are, to relocate to a job that actually exists and pays something, you can provide relocation vouchers. And there are many other things that you can do as well.
Thank you. And so let me then give the final word to you, Mark. So you've already been, I think, covered something like 4,000 workers with the program.
Yes.
That you currently have, and you're scaling up from there.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to other companies about how to approach the reskilling of their workforce?
Yeah, well, the first thing I mentioned is when you start with these new technologies, when you have fear in your company, basically be fully transparent. Depending on your system, take the Workers' Council early on with it. We have been, one of the first meeting was sitting together with them, getting them on board and moving ahead. The second thing, demystify technologies. Yeah? People, when they hear robots or AI, they have a clear picture of a movie, which are normally not so well for the human in many aspects. Get that out, explain what it is. Yeah? It's mathematics, what it can and what it can't do, and have a clear transformation program in place. So reskill your workers, take them with you, and then that can be a very positive experience for all people involved. And I have to admit, and I said it to you, when we started with the first robotics, it was really difficult. People were afraid to show us the process. Now we have a backlog till mid of next year, ready for over 100 bots, because they know that the technology is helping them and not eating up their job.
Fantastic. So I think it's fair to conclude that there is still room for optimism. So thank you both very much, and let's have a nice round of applause for
thank you,
our panelists.